The movie begins with a young boy named Ichigo Kurosaki on his way home, walking alongside his mother. As they stroll, Ichigo notices a little girl gazing at the river. In a kind gesture, he decides to run over to offer her his umbrella. Despite his mother's calls to him, ignores her and continues approaching the girl. Eventually, his mother suddenly turns up dead. Time has moved swiftly, and Ichigo, now a high school student in the city of Karakura, finds himself in a heated argument with three troublemakers. His anger flares up because they have damaged the offering flowers in a particular place. Since the troublemakers refuse to relent, Ichigo puts his skills to use. After defeating them, he approaches the spirit of the little boy and guides him towards the path to heaven. In the Kurosaki household, Ichigo lives with his father, Isshin Kurosaki, and his two younger sisters, Kirin and Yuzu. Sadly, their mother passed away while protecting Ichigo during his childhood. While Ichigo is in his room, he is taken aback by the sudden appearance of a woman dressed entirely in black, armed with a sword. Without hesitation, Ichigo tries to chase her away. The woman, equally surprised that Ichigo can see her, is caught off guard. Before long, the woman, Rukia Kuchiki, spots a creature named Fishbone heading their way. Ichigo, still thinking of her as a ghost, is determined to send her away. However, Rukia, a soul reaper or Shinigami, uses a binding spell to restrain him. She explains her role to Ichigo. But when Ichigo hears his sister's screams, he breaks free and rushes to the living room. Downstairs, Ichigo spots his sister Yuzu being abducted by the monstrous Hollow. Acting without a second thought, he dashes after the creature in a desperate attempt to save her. Luckily, Rukia arrives to help rescue Yuzu. Rukia explains that the creature they faced is called a Hollow, and that it hungers for Ichigo's high spiritual energy. However, it becomes clear that Rukia is struggling in her battle against the formidable Hollow. Intrigued, Ichigo asks how they can defeat this menacing foe. Gasping for breath, Rukia tells him that the only way to vanquish the Hollow is to pierce it with her sword and transform Ichigo into a Shinigami like herself. Yet, she warns him that there's a grave risk of both of them dying if the process fails. After careful consideration, Ichigo decides to take on the role of a Shinigami. As time passes, Ichigo awakens from his slumber, thinking that the events of the previous night were just a bizarre dream. However, as he heads downstairs, he is confronted by the harsh reality that their house is in shambles. Ichigo's father, who knows that a truck did not cause this damage, suspects a colossal creature is to blame. Yuzu also has no recollection of the incident. At school, Ichigo arrives and begins to tell his friend about the destruction of his house, clarifying that it wasn't caused by a truck, but by a massive creature. Before he can finish his story, Rukia suddenly appears as a new transfer student at their school. She immediately whisks Ichigo away to the school rooftop. There, Ichigo is shocked to realize that the events of the previous night were not a mere dream. Rukia explains that she cannot return to the Soul Society because her Shinigami powers have been transferred to Ichigo. In order for her to go back, she needs Ichigo to return her powers by using the same method, by piercing her with her own sword. However, their first attempt at transferring the powers fails, leaving Rukia to reluctantly accept her predicament. She then imparts her knowledge to Ichigo, explaining that there are two types of spirits: whole spirits, the kind Ichigo has often encountered, and hollows, soul-devouring spirits. A Shinigumi's role is to guide whole spirits to the Soul Society and to exterminate hollows with their Zanpakuto swords. Rukia also advises Ichigo to undergo physical training to control the surplus spiritual energy within him, which will enable him to effectively combat hollows. That night, Ichigo was surprised to discover Rukia casually hiding in his closet. She had nowhere to go and decided to stay there until she could return to the Soul Society. The following day, Rukia visited her friend's antique store. The owner, a former Shinigami named Urahara, was expelled from the Soul Society, but was willing to assist Rukia during her time in the human world. Meanwhile, in the Soul Society, a senior Shinigami named Byakuya Kuchiki couldn't sense Rukia's spiritual energy and sent Renji Abare to find her. One evening, as Ichigo was heading home, Renji suddenly confronted him and asked about Rukia's whereabouts. Ichigo refused to reveal where she was, leading to a confrontation between them. Later, Ichigo told Rukia about the encounter and asked why Renji had attacked him. However, Rukia instructed Ichigo to let it go and concentrate on his training. The next day, Ichigo was approached by a classmate named Yuryu Ishida, who didn't waste time and immediately recognized Ichigo as a Shinigami. Ichigo invited Yuryu to the school rooftop, where Yuryu revealed that he belonged to the Quincy clan, a group that had been wiped out by the Shinigami. Yuryu's goal was to avenge his clan by exterminating Hollows, and he demonstrated his abilities to Ichigo. Yuryu challenged Ichigo to a battle, but Ichigo refused. To prove his point, Yuryu used an object to attract a Hollow, and Rukia, upon seeing it, asked Ichigo to join her in dealing with it. They arrived at a park where they found a child's spirit under attack by a spider-like Hollow. Ichigo acted swiftly to defeat the Hollow. Renji, realizing he was dealing with a substitute Shinigami, attacked Ichigo. Surprisingly, Byakuya, who was also present, instructed Rukia to reclaim her Shinigami powers and promised to forgive her actions. Rukia explained that taking her powers back would kill Ichigo because his spiritual energy wasn't fully developed. Seeing Rukia's determination, Byakuya gave her until the next full moon. The night of the full moon came, and Ichigo, expecting Rukia to have returned to the Soul Society as promised, was surprised when she wasn't in the closet. He turned to Yuryu to ask about the way to the Soul Society, wondering if Rukia had already gone back. Unfortunately, Yuryu didn't know how to reach the Soul Society, but he mentioned a former Shinigami, Urahara. Without hesitation, Ichigo went to Urahara to find out how to get to the Soul Society. To his surprise, Urahara informed him that Rukia hadn't returned to the Soul Society yet. She was meeting with Byakuya, only to seek forgiveness and protect Ichigo. On the other hand, Byakuya was confident that Ichigo would be defeated by Grand Fisher. He ordered Renjito defeat Grand Fisher and eliminate Rukia immediately, believing that Rukia wouldn't be able to harm Ichigo as she was bound to him. That night, Ichigo told Rukia that his family would be visiting their mother's grave the next day. Knowing Rukia had no family of her own, he suggested she stay on Earth, and they could be friends. However, due to the rules of the Soul Society, Rukia couldn't stay on Earth. Still, she was happy to hear Ichigo's words. The next day, Ichigo and his family went to visit their mother's grave. Since the kids were a bit slow, their father went ahead to the cemetery. Yuzu and Kirin asked Ichigo to buy drinks for them. While walking to their mother's grave, a child's spirit suddenly appeared and blocked their path. Yuzu and Kirin tried to comfort the crying child, but then it transformed into a monster. At the same time, Rukia informed Ichigo that Grand Fisher was nearby, and they rushed toward it. When Ichigo saw Grand Fisher holding his two younger sisters as hostages, he acted immediately. However, Grand Fisher used a cunning trick by creating an illusion of Ichigo's mother, leaving him stunned and unable to move. Before Ichigo could be completely trapped by the illusion, Rukia quickly woke him up. The sight of his mother's appearance made Ichigo furious, and he resumed the battle. While Ichigo was at a restaurant, his two friends, Chad and Orihime, sensed his presence there. Ichigo asked them to take care of his friends at the restaurant, and the battle with Grand Fisher continued. In the midst of Ichigo being cornered, Ryu suddenly appeared and helped Ichigo fight Grand Fisher. Yuryu's reason for assisting Ichigo was to challenge him to a duel and prove his abilities. As Ichigo was trapped inside a bus, Rukia instructed Yuryu to shoot Grand Fisher directly in the forehead with an arrow. After a long battle, Ryu was suddenly attacked from behind by Renji. Meanwhile, Byakuya ordered Rukia to finish off Ichigo immediately because she had become emotionally attached to a human. Unexpectedly, Rukia refused to follow Byakuya's orders because they had shared many experiences together. Upon hearing Rukia's statement, Byakuya commanded Renji to eliminate both Rukia and Ichigo. This led to an inevitable battle as Ichigo confronted Renji, determined to uphold Byakuya's broken promise. Now it was Ichigo's turn to face Byakuya, and this battle proved to be incredibly challenging because Byakuya could effortlessly deflect Ichigo's attacks with just his fingers. Despite suffering severe injuries, Ichigo fought on with unwavering determination. However, just as Byakuya was about to deliver a decisive blow, Rukia arrived in the nick of time to save him. Surprisingly, Rukia knelt before Byakuya and begged for forgiveness, expressing her deep remorse for her mistakes. Moved by Rukia's sincerity, Byakuya finally forgave her and extended an invitation for her to return to the Soul Society. After receiving this forgiveness, Rukia handed Ichigo a Zanpakuto and instructed him to return her powers. Rukia informed Ichigo that he would return to his regular life and forget all about being a Shinigami. With a sense of relief, she used her Zanpakuto to return the borrowed Shinigami powers. After all the hardships, Rukia, Renji, and Byakuya went back to the Soul Society. In the end, Ichigo returned to his ordinary life, completely forgetting about being a Shinigami, including his encounters with Yuria when they returned to school. The story concluded. Moral lesson from the story: never ignore your mom's calls, or you might end up becoming a Ghostbuster.